Hello and welcome to my workshop. And by workshop, I mean my house. Today we are transforming, or rather upcycling, an old clock I found in my garage. As I mentioned before, Kuba and I recently bought a house, and the owners wanted to get rid of the property with everything as is. So they wanted to leave all of their stuff there. So we spent the last 2 years getting rid of all of their stuff bit by bit. And in the process, we found a few things that were a little bit odd or curious or kind of cool. And I wanted to take one of those things and transform it into something even cooler or maybe decorative for our upcoming wedding celebration, which is where we're jumping into the build. First, I needed to get the clock inside and gather all the materials I needed to upcycle it. In contrast to my other projects, I did not want to plan everything beforehand. So I just got all the tools, colors, brushes and pens I could find that could in any way be useful for this operation. Here we can see the very important sniff test conducted by Dr. Watson, which lets us know whether the project is CAT approved. Seems to be okay. The next step was to remove the interior from the clock. Unfortunately, the previous owner simply crammed all the broken parts into the back of the clock, so there was no saving the actual function of the piece. But at least we can still hear what it sounded like before. Which made me way too excited for some reason. I collected all the pieces for later inspection. Maybe they could be repurposed for the exterior in some way. Next, I gave the clock a quick clean. Then, I tried to disassemble the clockwork parts as far as possible without using force, which did not work as good as I intended. But more on that later. After everything was prepared for further processing, I started painting the clock body. That is, I removed the loose parts of the wood paneling and filled the holes in the laminate layer with green paint. The first layer was a bit too light, so I once again went over the first layer with a darker green. Next, I cut out the Emma and Watson wedding picture Kuba had created for our wedding playlist to be on the face of the clock. As the disassembly of the clockwork parts did not work by simply using a screwdriver, I had to resort to more desperate measures. In this case, a Dremel rotary tool to cut and remove the gears from the rest. Fortunately, you cannot see my outfit for this part of the video because, smart as I am, I thought if I leave my shirt on, the sparks will burn my shirt. And I love this t-shirt, so I'll just take it off. Spoiler alert, if the sparks burn your t-shirt, genius, the sparks will also burn your skin. So if I left the audio track in, you would hear lots of ooh from when the sparks hit my only sparsely clad upper body. After collecting all the clockwork parts for the final decoration step, I tried to clean everything to become as shiny as possible. First in an ultrasound bath, then in a vinegar solution, and finally by rubbing the parts clean using a dry cotton towel. But nothing actually worked. So I tried something I have never done before using spray paint, which seemed quick and easy on the surface, but requires a bit of practice in my opinion. So the gold coating is not as smooth as I would have wanted it to be, but still smooth enough if you don't look too closely. After all of the parts were as golden as possible and the first layer of paint was dry, I could continue with the gold details on the painted parts of the clock body. Once again, I did not actually plan out what I wanted to paint here, but I just went without thinking too much. If you do not feel comfortable freestyling something like that, you can always prepare a blueprint for your patterns or just practice on paper until you find something you like. The next step in the build was to plan out the locations of the individual clockwork parts, by laying them on the clock body and just testing out what looked like a good location for the respective part. After I had found a location for each part, I took a picture of the whole thing to be able to recreate it later on. Then I had to glue the individual parts together in the intended positions. I just used super glue for that. You could also use hot glue or any kind of glue that dries fast. And for the final step, I simply had to attach all the individual parts to the clock body at the locations I mapped out before, using the reference picture I took before. And now for the reveal. Ta-da! Our wedding clock. I love it very much, and it was the perfect Easter egg for our wedding celebration last month. I was able to transform trash left behind by strangers into something that I will cherish forever and will have a home in our garage, or maybe even our home, I think, for a very long time. And what I learned through the entire process of buying a house and transforming everything into our own is that another man's trash can become your treasure, but it takes a lot of work and you have to be willing to put that work in. Don't get me wrong, some things just need to be thrown out, but sometimes you should also keep it and just see what you can do. Except for fish head. Fish head are forever. Thank you for watching. I hope you can find something you can transform, and see you in the next video.